cloud computing in Asia? Can we trust the cloud? Cloud computing is poised to be one of the biggest drivers of economic growth in the next decade. And I think that many researchers have projected that the market size of cloud computing to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide. Now, ACCA Cloud Readiness Index Survey for 2014 also indicates that there has been an increase in cloud adoption. And I think that the speakers have also alluded to that. But as cloud services have grown worldwide, issues such as reliability of access, security, government access, privacy, intellectual property protection, data sovereignty, and so on have emerged as challenges to cloud adoption. Other issues also, such as data portability, interoperability, and vendor lock-ins have also emerged. But I think what is more important is that recently there's a new growing conversation around trust. Trust in the service provider, in the network, in cybersecurity, and most importantly, in the actions of government. But what is the future of cloud computing today, especially since Edward Snowden's revelation vis-a-vis the PRISM project, which the US National Security Agency, NSA, has adopted? By the way, you might also, those of you who are interested, Revelations actually in Greek is actually apocalypse. So when you say Revelations, it's apocalypse. So perhaps Snowden's disclosures of Revelations is an apocalypse for many situations in information technology. Now, the Information Technology Innovation Foundation estimates that cloud providers in the US alone will lose between $21.5 billion and $35 billion US dollars in revenues by 2016 because of the NSA's activities. And because they are able to obtain and mine data to investigate certain people, etc. And that, I guess, is the allegations that have been put forward. Other surveys have shown that a significant number of organizations are putting on hold cloud migration programs. Some are even reversing this migration because of the security issue and the privacy issue. For example, one of the magazines in a survey said 33% have put projects on hold of the population survey, and 13% of their population survey also have brought cloud projects back in-house. So in Asia, the survey done by the Asia Cloud Computing Association indicates concerns about data sovereignty, data privacy, broadband speeds and coverage, and data center risks. So the future of cloud computing in Asia, can we trust the cloud? And I guess we are really privileged here to have three experts in cloud computing. Dr. Riza, Mr. Keith Bestgrove, and Dr. Lee Ping Yen. And I guess we can put this question forward to them. Can we trust the cloud in view of the revelations of the extensive data privacy issues and other perceived concerns of the growing user base for cloud computing vis-a-vis trust in service provider promises, networks, data and cyber security, data sovereignty, and government activity? So Dr. Riza, could I ask you to start your views on can we trust the cloud?
Well, I trust the cloud. So I'm here to actually lure you actually to adopt cloud. As I probably have exemplified in my talk earlier, a lot of debates, argumentation for all of us about adopting cloud. When we try to convince the Ministry of Defense and the military of adopting cloud, they will probably 9 out of 10 visit to Ministry of Defense was unsuccessful. They send you back. They send you away because the Ministry of Defense are basically trying to limit all the access toward the information inside. The same thing also for our Ministry of Home Affairs. It's really a tough decision for all of us to lure them or to attract them toward delivering the population database toward other ministry which wants to make use of them. Right? We want to authenticate the recipient of food subsidy because we have a lot of poor people. The Office of the Vice President is looking at how many people within a certain region are eligible to provide vouchers. But so many years have passed without any verification and authentication. So we want to be legitimate, to deliver legitimate public services. So they have to have authentic identification by biometric verification. So this is how it comes to play. By delivering the data over the cloud to other ministries to basically deliver legitimate, then you build up trustworthiness of the cloud. Actually. It is identity and trustworthiness of the data and the people that can bring you to basically trust the infrastructures. And this has been exemplified for many things, many occasions at this time. At least we are doing food subsidy, we are doing interoperability of electronic ID with our Malaysian partner because in Malaysia there is a MyCard. This is going toward ASEAN ID, something like that, interoperability. And secondly, internally, we are working with the election committee to basically share this data. So you need to have really a good showcase that can foster the adoption of the cloud. You have to really show that the cloud is, in some aspect, is secure. It's going to limit the fraud and forgery that has been happening in many years. It's a breakthrough, it's a solution to local government to basically, oh yeah, now I do have a legitimate citizen database. Not that everybody has many IDs, right? So they can have many wives because you have many IDs means many wives for most of the people, not only many houses. So this is how we try to shape up. I know a lot of things have to be worked out. You have to be very meticulous in really saying that the cloud is secure. But in certain cases where you can really zoom into a certain criteria, like whether it is a verification, data verification, data legitimation, then people will feel safe and trust. I think trustworthiness is the thing, is the key word for having cloud being adopted by many stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess to paraphrase it is that we will be putting in systems in Indonesia that will provide greater security and transparency. And I guess that if the government takes care of it themselves, you can actually make sure that the cloud is more secure. And by showing that the government is shall we say, quite trustful of the cloud, then perhaps the commercial sector will follow. Could I have your views then, Latif? What is your views on the our trust in the cloud and in view of all the problems that come out?
Okay, thank you. I've got three comments with respect to this question. The first one is, if you are a small business in any country in the world and you're wanting to adopt a cloud service, you really have no negotiating power. Most of the cloud service providers are large corporations. They have standard terms and conditions, and you are not going to be able to negotiate a special deal if you are a company with 30 employees and a turnover of a few $1 million. So you're very much in a market that's a take it or leave it situation. And many small businesses don't trust the cloud because they don't know what they're getting. And I think it's our contention that not all, but many existing cloud services providers globally are providing inadequate transparency of service offering. And in many cases, they're actually capable of providing much better information. And the sorts of things that we were trying to achieve through the cloud services protocol that I was talking about earlier were all about voluntarily signing on to letting us know what you would actually provide. What were your terms and conditions? How do you handle data portability? What happens in certain scenarios? How are you guaranteeing the security of my information? And what happens if there's a breach? Most of the large providers actually have well-developed policies there, but they seem sometimes reluctant to make those widely available and seem reluctant to sign on to any sort of standards arrangement. So the Singapore announcement this morning, I think, is a very interesting one because I think that's potentially a very exciting development. So small business has a tendency to mistrust the cloud. I would contend sometimes with good reason, because they don't have, if you like, a framework of standards or a framework of self-regulation by the industry that would give them greater confidence. So some of what's driving the Australian government's approach has been to try and make that more readily available, and I think there's still work to be done there, and I think that the cloud services providers do have to lift their game in that area, and I know that they don't like being told that, but that's certainly my view after dealing with the sector for some years. The second thing I'd like to say is that long before the Snowden revelations, issues to do with data security and sovereignty were quite deep-seated. And in my own country's case, Fujitsu, Microsoft and others have done a lot of market research that demonstrates that Australians actually care a lot about where the data is located, regardless of whether there's a technical need to locate the data. So that's the market that you're dealing with, and I know that's the case in many other countries as well. People don't like the idea of their data necessarily being located in California if they're living in France or Australia or maybe Singapore. So get used to that. That's the market we operate in, and people do care about location. So location of data, regardless of the technical requirements, is a reality in the cloud services marketplace. It's one of the reasons why there are so many data centres being set up in Australia. People actually care about where the data is, and they'll continue to care. Having said that, the third thing I was going to say is, in Australia, it's often the state governments that have moved much faster than the national government. And a wonderful example is the Department of Industry and Trade and Investment in Victoria. They've been using cloud services since 2009, and they've moved their whole grants management system onto cloud using Salesforce about 3 years ago. And the data is stored in California and backed up in Japan. How did they get away with that in a country as conservative as Australia? They took their internal auditors and their Premier's department through every step of the process in setting this up, so they didn't wait to be audited later. They took the auditors through the whole process, demonstrated the security, demonstrated the savings, and were able to, I think, achieve savings of something like 70% in their cost of operation for these systems. So 3 different comments, 3 different perspectives, but I think it underscores what I was saying earlier. This is a very fluid mix from a policy and regulatory perspective at this moment.
Thank you, Kim. I just thought I would just quote another survey that shows that 46% of the respondents of the survey were very concerned, and 24% were somewhat concerned about the threat of government accessing corporate data after the Snowden case. Now, in Singapore, Hing Yen, perhaps we could have your views on the, can we trust the clouds?
So in general, responding directly to the Snowden case, that really affects US owned cloud service providers and US located cloud service providers. So if you want to get around the problem, use the non-US cloud service providers. I think the difficulty has been in the Snowden case, the trust was broken through the lack of transparency. So as part and parcel of our ongoing work in Singapore, we try to engender trust in cloud service providers through transparency. And what was announced this morning in the multi-tier cloud security is one such attempt. So essentially is to make it very clear where the cloud securities provisioning provided by cloud service providers and what tier they are provided at. So that it's very clear to users what they're expecting. What was not mentioned by Steve, but also important as part of the security certification is the requirement for cloud service providers to self-disclose all their service, especially those which are non-security. As Keith has mentioned, we need them to specify all the policies, where their data is located, which country, and how these things have been affected. So there's a declaration form. And if you want to see an example of self-disclosure form, we have already a system at IDA Pavilion. You can have a look. Several cloud service providers in Singapore has already submitted the self-disclosure form to us, so that and it will be made publicly available to anybody who wants to know what they provide. So these are 2 areas, and other areas that we're exploring are continual monitoring of the availability and uptime. So we are at the booth. You see a demo of what you would likely to see in a future cloud service provider registry that we're putting in place, where any potential buyer of cloud services can go to the website and look at what is the past uptime, past availability information for a particular cloud service provider, so that you know what you're buying into before you make that decision. So transparency is extremely important. That's the only way you can assure users that there's trust in whoever is providing that service.
Thank you very much. So I guess what you are saying is this, that perhaps it's best to look at local clouds rather than the international clouds sometimes, if you actually have got secured data or you are concerned about foreign government activity that may enable them to actually access your data. But Keith, what do you think about cloud uptime and scalability of the cloud? Can you always trust that the cloud will actually be scalable to your requirements when you require it, or whether the speed of access will meet the specifications that you are looking for?
Certainly, the discussions we've had with users and suppliers in Australia would suggest that we don't have very many instances where reliability and scalability has been much of a real problem, but it is certainly a perceived problem. And when there are instances where there's significant downtime, that tends to make the newspapers, doesn't it? So I think it's a bit like data breach examples. When a large multinational company has a data breach, it seems to make headlines all around the world. What doesn't make headlines is the 99.9% of the time when that isn't going on. So I think in a lot of cases, what we're dealing with here is perceptions of concern and finding ways to overcome those perceptions. And I emphasise the importance of transparency because that's a really important thing for the large providers to be able to do. And if you talk to many of the multinationals, they'll say, well, we meet all these concerns, but they meet them according to their own set of criteria. And every single multinational has a different set of criteria. So I guess my contention would be, why don't they come up with a common set that we could all understand? Because I think that would actually be a major step forward. And I think some of the work that's going on through things like the Cloud Security Alliance is a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much. And Doctor, would you like to also make your comments as to whether there's any concerns in downtime and scalability of cloud and access times, etc.?
Yeah, maybe I try to add to what Keith said. Reliability and scalability is really important issue, but I will say security is number one actually. In terms of reliability and scalability, certainly we have so many service providers that comply to this high availability and other requirement on the service level agreement side. Yeah, where certainly we want it to be the best they can deliver. But looking at this reliability and scalability comes into really something that we have to ponder with. If we are launching actually really a huge system, just taking for example that we want to develop the cloud system for the election. Most of the people will think that the way that we can do cloud infrastructures for electronic counting is by having this manual setup of counting that we have in our law or in our regulation, taking it from the polling station toward the district level and then going up in stages again to the provincial level and from provincial level to the national tabulation is a matter of just moving that into a cloud. But that's not the case. Yeah, we have 540 million polling stations, and this is a polling station where you have infrastructures and you don't have infrastructures, like in Papua, for example, or in remote Kalimantan or Borneo, right? So if you are thinking of having this cloud access through this area where you don't even have quite infrastructures, then the issue of reliability and availability becomes really a priority. So the other area where they have infrastructure which can deliver this quite fast because of high availability of the cloud in this area is can deliver the result in 1 day. So now we have to think about this whether cloud is really a solution in terms of reliability for those areas with lack of infrastructure. I think that's my point.
Thank you very much. I guess I would like to just invite members of this the audience here. If you have any views you might want to put forward or any questions you would like to ask our panelists. If not, then time is we are coming to the end of our time. So maybe I would just like you all to just sum up, your view on the future of cloud in Asia, and whether we can trust it or not. Would you like to start then, Kim?
Just to summarise that, I think a number of speakers this morning have said that cloud will become just the way we do almost everything in the next few years, and I think that's unquestionably the case. So we will have to find ways to manage the issues that are of concern to people, and I think greater transparency is one important element of that. But I'm very confident that the trust issues will be overcome, and we see many examples where cloud service providers certainly provide much greater levels of security than some of the old ways of doing things anyway. So I think these issues will be overcome, and they will be overcome fairly soon.
Thank you very much. Doctor?
Yeah, I think cloud for Indonesia especially, cloud is the way to go forward. Many issues that needs to be resolved and probably resolved and promoted, I think, should be part of the adoption of the cloud. Certainly for us, cloud is the solution toward having a large budget to basically take up ICT into our government offices, and hopefully by having this cloud, government cloud, and also inviting the small medium enterprises which are lacking of this also infrastructures can also adopt cloud toward their businesses. I think we will see that the growth of the cloud, just like in my presentation, will be a major uptick in Indonesia for the years to come.
Ingrid?
So engendering trust through transparency can be done many ways. Our preference is for the industry to undertake industry self-regulation. And if IADA were to do it, we hope to do it with a very light touch.
Thank you. So I think that I could sum up by saying that the panelists probably feel that once we know the problems and if we can find out what's going on and what the transparency, if there's greater transparency, there's always a way to overcome the security issues. Once we actually have brought them up to the front. So I guess I can conclude by saying that the panelists are still very optimistic about the future of cloud in Asia, and we can overcome the threats, with the right technology and, shall we say, vigilance. Thank you very much, and I'd like to wish you all a good day and a happy attendance of the other programs in this seminar. Thank you very much. Thank you.